We like to create a class which will allow us to define a stream. So we'll just create our streams.js script. Basically, what we want to have with this stream is the ability to iterate through a collection of values which are produced by a function. To define a class, starting with ECMAScript 6, there is a dedicated syntax for that. So we create a stream. This class may have by default public members, but also private members. In order to define a private member, the name of the field should start with a hash. So I like to have the value, which will be the current value produced by the stream, and the producer function that's going to be the next value. There is a special keyword to create an instance of this object, which is called constructor, and this receives some arguments, in my case, a value and the next value, the value to produce the next value, the function to produce the next value. Although in other languages we don't have to use this to reference the current elements in the current instance. However, with JavaScript, we need to do that because those fields, those properties and methods only exist in the context of this instance. So I will set the value of the private field value to be the value of the argument, and then also I will set the next value function to be what I received as argument. I like also to count how many streams we create. Therefore, we need to define a static variable here. In order to define a static member, we use the keyword static. So my count field will just count how many instances we create. And here I like to increase this value. In order to access the static member, we need to prefix this with the name of the class. Okay, so let's expose a property which will return the value, the current value in the stream, and this should be accessible as a property. There is a syntax to define properties similar to what we have in C#, like, for instance, we define a function that's going to be called as a getter, and this will just return the value of the private field value. We can also have getters that may compute values, like for instance, this getter to produce the next value. And what we do here, we just store in the private field, we call the next value producer to compute the next value based on the current value in the stream. And then we just return this value from this context. So the name of the field is value. Now, in order to expose static getters, we need to prefix them with the static keyword. It is also a getter that's going to return the count. And this will just return the value of the private field. But this is not in this context, it is in the context of the class. Therefore, we will return the count of the string. So this is basically our base stream. It is storing the current value, it is storing a function to produce the next value, and it also counts how many instances of this type were created. Actually, how many instances of the stream or types extending stream will be created. Now, let's define a stream to produce a constant value, constant stream. This will extend our stream class, and that will be by calling the extends stream statement. And it will construct the stream based on a static value. So in order to call the superclass to be to set up the fields that we have, we inherit from that, we then call the super with a value and with a producer which will generate actually the same value all the time. We can create a second stream to produce the next integer value. Let's call this next integer stream. It will then extend the same stream, and in the constructor it will not receive a value, but rather will call the super to initialize the stream with a seed of 0, and the producer will be just a dummy function to return the next value. Now, let's just consume this by defining some constants for the constant stream, and we'll create a new constant stream. And we'll also define a next integer stream which will be instantiated as being a next integer stream. Now, what we want to do will be just to output several values of this. Let's just create a for int, for n. Let's define the iterator here, and we'll iterate 10 times, and then we will just output something to the console. What we like to output would be the following. Sorry for the typo. We will just say that the constant stream in this point equals to, and we then call the constant to take the next value. So it is just constant.next. We don't call a function here because this is defined as a getter, so we only have to get its value. We don't have a setter for this, so we are not allowed to put something in the next property, but only to get something out of it. And then we will output another value for the next integer stream. And then we say the next integer in this point, it's equal to next integer, and then we call the next property on the next integer stream as well. When we run this, let me just show the terminal and the debug console, and you see that all the values for the constant value are undefined because of the way we created the stream. I forgot to put here a value, so let's just say I'm outputting the value 1. And then when we run this without debugging, for instance, we see that the constant stream is producing all the time the value 1, whereas the next integer value is producing first 1, then 2, then 3, and so on. And in the end, we can also log how many streams we created by getting the value count of the stream. And this should display 2 because we created those 2 streams. And when they call the super constructor to initialize, this will count the call.